Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I am your host, Chris Gargano, and for episode 71, our topic is developing your network. What are the advantages to having true connections, people that can help us and we can help them? Our guest, Eray Saban, will tell the story of him growing up in Australia but wanting to work in America. What was he going to do to achieve his dreams? He's already been recognized 30 Under 30, issued by International Association of Venue Managers in May of 2022. Young Achiever of the Year, issued by Venue Management Association, May of 2020. He is in the venue management industry, and his title, recently promoted, Assistant General Manager, ASM Global Jacksonville, and Director of EverBank Stadium. This 31-year-old oversees parking, security, events, operations for concerts, bowl games, Jacksonville Jaguar games. This is a busy individual who has to be at the top of his game. We will go behind the scenes on his day-to-day, and I'm so glad you're here. The conversation begins now with Eray Saban. It is great to see you. It's going to be great visiting with you. We've known each other for a number of years. I am so glad your journey has taken you where you are. How are you doing, my friend?
Really looking forward to this conversation, and I'm doing well. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing wonderfully. Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm looking forward to this conversation. All right, you're the director of EverBank Stadium in Jacksonville, Florida. Tell us your day-to-day.
Uh, I love when anybody has asked me this question because it really is very various. NFL Stadium, just under 70,000 capacity. Day to day looks like keeping this building running, keeping our tenants happy, and then also obviously planning for the future. So whether it's major events that are coming up, private events that are taking place, building capital projects, or just everything in general that comes in relation with the stadium in preparation for a major event sort of assumes my day across our fantastic team. So for me, I'm very blessed to be here. I'm really excited to be here, and it's crazy. It's nearly been 12 months on that I have been here, and it's just every day is a new learning curve. So that sums it up in a little bit of a nutshell there.
Eray, you look at people that you meet over the course of your lives and you think about, what are those conversations like? How are they impacting me? We do this audit, but what I'm saying is this. When people speak to you, you seem to take genuine interest in people that you are either seeing as a mentor, equal stakeholders, or people that report to you, because you're in a substantial leadership position. So how do you view daily interactions with folks from all over parts of your life?
It's simple for me. Everyone is one and the same. And, you hear all those cliches of, treat the cleaner the same way you do the CEO and all those mentalities. And for me, I've just come back and, strip positions away, strip achievements away. Everybody's the same, right? We're all trying to do our best every single day. So for me, it's not that anybody's more important than one another. What I really emphasize is just the conversation, because I think without going too deep down the rabbit hole, we are so fixated on our work life day to day, every single day. And, those of seniority you give more attention to, where I just reflect back and say that we're all human beings, right? So why wouldn't we naturally just give everybody time and the respect of that time? So for me, it's two things I really just pride it back to is respect and communication. And I think everybody deserves that no matter their position or title.
We're going to get into philosophical elements of leadership because you are a director of a stadium, a major stadium. But let's look at this. Let's dig down on what you just said. Is that innate, Eray? Is it learned? Or do you have to study how to approach conversations, in your opinion?
I think it's a few parts. I'm really grateful for my upbringing. My parents had always prided themselves on that exact thing of respect. The family and their upbringing, they really had to work hard to earn respect from people. And for me, that's what it was always about from my parents, was teaching me that respect. But I think as well, being surrounded by people that think the exact same, that give you the time of day, whether it's a conversation or whether it's a phone call, whatever it may be. I think naturally as more people do it to you, it becomes infectious and it becomes something that you really pride yourself and build yourself upon.
So when you hire people, we're jumping right into it today, and I love this. So when you hire folks, there's obviously you're going to get 400 resumes for one position, and that's professional sports in and around event presentation per se. So when you're looking at the skill set and you're trying to decide who makes the top five, what do you look for by way of matching those values that you just brought forward?
I think it's the way they write it. Like, I think about resumes in general these days, so much as around, the tasks that they do or whatever they, maybe, have achieved. But for me, it's more so around what are you doing outside of your role as well that you are depicting on your resume. I'm big, and we can probably chat about it a little bit later on the charity work. And what are you doing above and beyond your role? What are you bringing into workplace culture? I think anybody, given they've got the mindset, can be taught the role, but you can't be taught character. And I think if you're depicting that in your resume and then later in an interview, that's the most important part.
When you've gotten the jobs that you've had, because you only got out of university in 2015, for goodness sakes, it's look at where we are now, not that many years ago. So when you've achieved what you've achieved and climbed and ascended as a leader, what is the feedback you've been given as to why you got the job? Because we all ask that, right? What is it? Hey, you're in a quiet moment of maybe a month or a week after getting the job. You don't maybe ask directly, but most folks will say, yeah, here's why you got the job. What is that feedback you've received?
I think it's a really interesting and a real opportune time to do that because I personally don't do it enough. And I think for me, it's relationships. I've always prided myself on my relationships, and that's not a tactic. That's not something I plan to do. For me, I just genuinely care about people. And I think relationships bring so many things to the table in any role and just in life as well. I mean, if you're willing to listen to people and give them the respect, uncomfortable conversations, moments of conflict, moments of success all become more celebrated, I would say, because you have that mutual respect of relationships. So relationships, number one, and probably the second one is work ethic. I don't know everything, but by God will I try and work it out. And I won't try and learn by myself. I'll go to the people that are the experts and try and learn off them. The last thing is just curiosity. Be curious, right? A lot of my work has come up in the event operation space. Like, be curious in what's not happening in your department, and whether it's spending time with your turf team or your facilities teams in our field of work, or your commercial teams or your sales and marketing teams. Like, just be interested and show that interest and that willingness to learn. And I think those three have been massive fundamentals for me growing through my career over the years, and will become those real three fundamentals that will remain in my career for as long as I'm in this industry or any industry, to be honest.
You went exactly where I was going to go. The power of curiosity. If people could understand, and some do, a lot do, you do, how powerful that is and where that can get you. Curiosity when you're sitting in a room and accessing information on the internet, right? And researching, as you said, or curiosity about why a certain department or an individual works the way they do. Just ask them. Have a conversation. What were you thinking when that decision was made? Not in a confrontational way, Eray, the curiosity that allows people to share. How have you harnessed that and found, because you brought it up, I didn't have to. How have you found that to be, in essence, a superpower for yourself as you progress in your career?
I think for me, it's, not coming from a place of trying to interrogate on their role or take their role, just understanding how my role can positively impact theirs. And naturally by sitting down with them and understanding that, you naturally get exposed to an understanding of their role. Because any corporation or any organization, I'm a big believer in, they complain about the marketing team, these internal struggles that we all have. But how often have we actually gone and sat down with that department and go, hey, what are the pain points and how can we work together to remediate that? I think we all are very quick to sort of just say, hey, this is an issue and it's them again and they've done this again. But how often are we actually going and having a conversation, expressing what's happening and how what they're doing is actually impacting ourselves? Because half the time they may not even be cognizant of it. And also on top of that, you can't complain unless you're working to find a solution so it doesn't occur again. So I think for me, that's sort of where it's been a real sort of staple in my organizations.
You are the epitome of an emerging leader. You are a leader, but you're emerging. You're going to do great things. You already are. How did you arrive to this opportunity at this stage of your life?
I think for me, and it's not a story that I've necessarily shared too widely, but obviously you know it as well as anybody, and always willing to share it in the hope that somebody else sees it and it inspires them, which is the most important part. What I'd say is it didn't come along easy. I always sort of, especially once I got past my time at the Australian Open and going into Etihad Stadium at the time, Marvel Stadium, I always wanted to work in American sports, most specifically the NFL. And the reason why I say that, I just think that the broadcast capability, the viewership, the growth of the game of the NFL just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And probably the only sports that are incomparable are obviously football, soccer, the world game at the English Premier League or Spanish League level. And it just felt like, with no disrespect to where I was positioned in Australia, was where I wanted to land. And it wasn't an easy task. It took probably about 6 or 7 years of relentless work. And some people think, what does work sort of entail? And for me, I mean, look no further than how we met. It's 3 a.m., 4 a.m. phone calls in Melbourne, Australia, with somebody that is 15 hours ahead in New York or Jacksonville, Florida. It took a lot of relationships building, and that's really genuine relationship building. That's not just people that, hey, you want to get to know because they might help you get the foot in the door. It's understanding how the dynamics take place in a different country. So that sort of transpired into working in Hong Kong. A couple of people that I'm really, really grateful to was John Sharkey, he was Executive Vice President of ASM Global for Europe. And we had a conversation one Sunday afternoon, and we always discussed about the potential of moving to the US. And ASM Global being such a world-renowned venue management company, he discussed that and started to navigate what it looked like in the US. And again, it was building those relationships. I was pretty relentless pre-COVID, but during COVID as well. And then coming out of COVID, and actually just not being a face that's showing up at 3 a.m. Melbourne time, but a face that's showing up at your door. So I did 2 separate trips, one in 2019 and then one post-pandemic to the US. And I think I got to something like 10 cities in 20 days in the first trip. And then I think after that, I got to another 12 in 20 days. So I think I broke my record the second time around, where I was just flying city to city and talking to people and saying, hey, I'm really interested in understanding your business and wanting to take my career here. What that meant was, how do you separate yourself from everybody else? Because there's not many companies out there or people that are willing to take a chance on somebody from Melbourne, Australia to come work in the US when there are so many incredibly talented professionals here as well. It's a lot easier. You don't have to navigate through the visa requirements. But then as it transpired into potential opportunities that, popped up in ASM Global in North America, they really just saw that the passion, I think, which is the most important part, the passion, the curiosity, the willingness to learn, and the complete investment. I'm a very loyal guy. So for them to see that as well, not many people are willing to do that or willing to vouch for you as well. So for me, it's all about making those people proud. But also ultimately now I look back on it, making myself proud as well, because I know when I sit here in this position, but for me, I know I worked my ass off harder than anybody that I could definitely say was trying to do the same.
Where did you get that drive? What about your upbringing? And it's not just drive, Eray. What you're saying here, if people are listening, and we hope they are from a form of curiosity.
Hopefully.
So where did you get that drive? Because people mistake sometimes drive with just that narrow focus. I'm going to be great at a sport, at a task, at a skill. But what you're saying is you had the drive coupled with forming relationships. That was part of your drive and passion. And you used the word passion. Not too many people can connect that at such a young age. You did. Where did that come from?
That's a tough question. I've got to say, probably my upbringing. My parents both met in Melbourne, Australia, but migrated through the war in Cyprus. So I think for them, they always came to Australia with their backs against the wall, right? They were a migrant, an immigrant, whatever you want to call them, in Australia, and we're grateful that Australia has turned into one of the world's, if not the world's, most multicultural country. That I think for me, you hear stories of the struggles that your parents naturally go through, whether it's war, and obviously it's happening around the world every day now, or so it seems. Their struggle for me, I just look back and go, hey, that's nothing in comparison. So for me, my drive just came from, hey, you're doing this for yourself, but also probably selfishly now I look back on it, so many people did say to me that, what happens if the US doesn't come off? What are you going to do? And for me, it just never sat in the back of my mind. If anything, that was more a motivator rather than something that sort of put me down, I would say. And, long-winded answer, Chris, but what I'd say is it's definitely probably my parents and their upbringing and my family heritage as well is a big part of that.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I understand it completely. And you back it up. I'm going to read your LinkedIn About You section, just for frame of reference. I like to do this. I like to pick out little parts of people that I think is very interesting. Here we go. Strong believer in the power of networking and sharing my knowledge with others. The world needs a better connection with everyone, especially to all the wonderful people that I've met along the way, along with the incredible companies that I have been lucky enough to work for over the years. Period. So you would think this is a hard driving individual that basically said, I'm going to America no matter what. I have the support of my family. They've overcome adversity. They've achieved a lot. That is me as well. So you would think in reading a LinkedIn About section, it would be hard driving. And here are the numbers. Here are the metrics that I've achieved. Here's what I've done. No, all about people. That's what's so consistent, which I love that I'm uncovering with this podcast over the course of the last year. So I will ask you this. You have, my last report since we talked a few weeks ago, is that you have 6 direct reports. How do you lead them? What is it like on a day-to-day at EverBank Stadium when you're mobilizing and getting everyone to row in the same direction with that metaphor?
It's simple. It's communication. What's happening in their world, where are the pain points, where are the struggles, where are the successes, and understanding and just listening. I think half the time, I know definitely for me in my career, all I wanted to do is be heard, right? And where I can shepherd and assist, I will. But for these guys, a lot of them are so self-sufficient, right? There's so many professionals, not just in this building, although there's plenty in this building, across the board. A lot of people just want that extra 10% or different perspective, I would say, and that willingness to listen. So for me, that's what I really prided on is, specifically as it relates to my team here, 85-90% of their day-to-day, they know exactly what they're doing and doing it at a really, really high standard. For me, it's that 10% of, one, just being a voice to listen to, and two, just providing them a different perspective or that devil's advocate for something that they're looking at. People make mistakes. They always will make mistakes. I know I've made a lot of mistakes over my career. It's creating that safe space where they can make mistakes, but then also learn from them, most importantly.
So you basically hire good people who know their work and know what they need to do and let them do their job. Is that safe to say?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what do you do, Eray? Because there's going to be 70,000 people in the building for various events, for a concert, a Jaguar game, whatever the case may be. What do you do when something is not working or there's a crisis? How do you deal with that? How do you mobilize your team? How do you remain calm? Or is your style to be elevated? And you tell us.
Yeah, for me, I always say that, naturally across all my roles, especially as it relates to an event day, people are looking for direction. And if you panic, everybody else is going to think, hey, if he's panicking, we've got to panic, right? So for me, it's all about keeping a cool and calm head where in your mind it might be melting down. I think the nature of the beast is that if you've got the right people in the right room prior to that crisis taking place, whether that's training, education, communication, you sat there and go, hey, we trained for this. Yeah, we made some mistakes. Let's sit back and reflect. You just hope that you continually learn. But obviously preparation is key as it relates to anything that pops up, and making sure that you are educated and you've got the right people and the right voices in the room going into those events.
What keeps you up at night? What are things that make your job challenging? Because there's folks that are overseeing a stadium in Dallas or San Francisco or the Pacific Northwest, and they're thinking, wow, this guy, he's the director of events there, the director of EverBank Stadium in Jacksonville, Florida. What are your pain points? What do you think about that causes you a little bit of stress?
I should start the caveat by saying I am really blessed that I sleep pretty well at night. More often than not, I have a tendency not to necessarily switch off when I get home, but switch off when my head hits the pillow. But it's we are an open air building that does take a lot of work. We are one of the older buildings that still operates definitely at, prime optimal NFL standards, but we don't have a roof. We don't have the luxury of the latest and greatest technologies. So for me, I actually like that because it's a challenge and keeping it up to speed and keeping that grind going on. But things that would naturally keep me up at night is the likes of emerging technologies as it relates to these people that are wanting harm across the board at major events that we've seen over the last few years. The safety is probably what keeps me up at night the most, but I sleep well because I'm extremely confident in the teams, not just at EverBank Stadium, but in all buildings all around the world, on their willingness and resilience to study, to learn, to train, to be educated on the latest upcoming and emerging threats. And that doesn't extend just to the buildings, but to the respective leagues and concert promoters and everybody else that's out there. So we're in a really, really good environment in terms of the major events industry, where I think everybody's willing to learn and listen and continually evolve.
So I'm glad you sleep well at night. And that gets to my next question. And that was very well articulated. And I could visualize and empathize with you, because that's a lot to think about. But there's a lot that is important to you. And you said when you hire people, you look at other things that they may do to help society, right? Either charities or getting behind initiatives. Tell the folks, please, if you could, some of those elements in your life, because I find them very interesting and they're very important to bring forward today, I think.
Yeah, probably the one that's closest to me that I have lost probably a little bit of touch with over the last 12 months, which I'm going easy on myself, transitioning from Hong Kong to the United States of America, is the Movember Foundation. I'm a big advocate for men's mental health. I shouldn't just say mental health, men's health in general, specifically with Movember, where they have 3 core pillars, which is one is men's mental health and suicide prevention, testicular cancer and prostate cancer. Those 3 are really important for me for a few fundamentals, specifically the 2 pillars of prostate cancer and mental health and suicide prevention. As it speaks to the first one, prostate cancer, my grandfather in Cyprus passed away from prostate cancer shortly after my dad and his 2 brothers, so my uncles, were all diagnosed like dominoes with prostate cancer. And I immediately saw the struggles that impacted on some of the most resilient men in my life, specifically my dad, and how it naturally impacted them, just physically, but also mentally as well. And what that sort of transpired into was the second pillar that I'm most passionate about, which was the mental health and suicide prevention. I'm in this age bracket now where I think people at my father's age, in their late 60s, probably brush mental health under the rug. Where I think definitely now at our age, at 30s and or early 20s into the early 30s and 40s and probably even the generation in the 50s as well, are starting to talk more about their mental health. I think it's really, really important. I mean, in this day and age of comparisons and social media and how challenging, COVID, inflation, all the things that have happened over our lives over the last 3 or 4 years, I think men are naturally now starting to talk more about what's happening in their mind. What we don't realize is that, the days of it's tough not to speak are done. It's tough to talk about your feelings. And, I'm a big champion of that. If things are going wrong in my life, I talk about them, whether it's picking up the phone and calling a friend, or just telling your partner, whoever it may be, what's going on in your life and why you're frustrated. That's manning up, in my perspective, in my opinion. And I was really grateful with our campaigns, our Team Saban campaigns that I've done with Movember after my surname. We've raised over $250,000 Australian dollars to fund vital research across those 3 pillars. So, I always use the example of the Movember team that, $250,000 from, one group is sensational. And don't get me wrong, that's fantastic. But for me, it's sparking those conversations with men that encourage them, one, to just go get a full health check, or 2, give a friend a call and go for a coffee, go for a drink, go for something to eat, go for a walk, whatever it may be, and just talk about what's happening in your lives. And I think that's what's most important. What I'm naturally seeing transition now, I'm seeing more of my friends become fathers. So, everybody does focus naturally with right to the partner that's given birth to the child. But what's it like? What's that life like for the dad now? All of a sudden they've got to worry about somebody else aside from their partner and themselves. What does that look like? Because, naturally, as men, we're not willing to talk about that as often as what we probably should be. And for me, I just want to make sure I'm championing and being a real pillar and a fundamental of expressing men and encouraging men to talk about what's happening up here, mate. Because honestly, it's one of the most important things and most important tools that we all struggle to conquer.
And that goes back consistently with what we're talking about today, which is that curiosity and asking the questions. It doesn't just go in the professional field. It's being a friend, a brother, a father, whatever the case may be in our roles in life. So it's asking and really listening and caring about what those answers are, right? So that's consistent with what we've talked about today. And I am so glad you shared all that. And we'll put information in the show notes about your initiatives, okay?
For sure.
All right. Are you ready, my friend, for the all-star round to close out today?
Let's go for it.
All right. How do you deal with adversity?
Speak.
2, how do you give yourself fuel?
Sleep.
3, what does never give up mean to you?
Resilience.
4, what is the value of collaboration?
Utmost importance.
We talked about this earlier, but we're going to get it succinctly. 5, hiring people. What do you look for in an ideal candidate?
Good character.
It's a consistent theme on this podcast, if I must say. 6, describe yourself as a leader in one sentence.
A good listener and good communicator and good collaborator.
Beautiful. 7, what is the difference between a manager and a leader?
The leader is willing to educate, collaborate, and listen.
Thank you, Eray. This was tremendous. The insight you provided, I can't thank you enough.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, and I can't thank you enough.
And we thank Eray very much for being on the show. My number one takeaway is this: what does it take to establish true connections and building up your network? Eray did those phone calls in the middle of the night from Australia to the United States, in addition to making those 2 trips. One, 10 cities in 20 days. The next, 12 cities in 20 days. That is the definition of committing to your craft and going for your dreams. Hope you enjoyed the conversation with Eray. We will see you next week, everybody, on Keep the Line Moving. Thank you very much. Have a great week. Every week, you hear guests on this podcast talk about some of their biggest leadership challenges. As a leader, you want to make an impact on those you lead and reach your organization's goals, while also optimizing your time management. Wherever you are in your leadership journey, we could all use some help. This is what we focus on with our group and individual coaching services. To book a call or get more information, email me directly at chrisg@garganoleadership.com or visit our website at garganoleadership.com. For our podcast and video producer, Jack Radutsky, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal, have a great week, everybody.